The Day Humanity Stopped Being Polite, human-centric science fiction story in 5 parts. Part 1, First Contact Frustrations, Earth 2157. Humanity has established colonies on Mars and Europa, with advanced space stations orbiting Earth. When an alien delegation from the Galactic Council arrives in the Sol system, they're greeted by diplomatic envoys led by Commander Diane Foster of the United Earth Space Force. The Galactic Council representatives, tall, blue-skinned beings called the Saurians, express surprise at humanity's technological advancement but maintain an air of condescension. Their lead diplomat, High Ambassador Zrel, presents humanity with terms for protected species status, treating Earth as a reservation rather than welcoming humans as equals. Commander Foster, along with her diplomatic advisor Jack Miller, maintain professional courtesy despite growing frustration. The aliens continually interrupt human representatives, dismiss humanity's achievements, and refuse to share meaningful technological information. At the conclusion of the first round of talks, the Saurians install monitoring satellites around Earth for humanity's protection without permission. They inform Earth's leadership that decisions about human expansion beyond the Sol system have already been made. Humans are to remain quarantined for their own safety. Behind closed doors, world leaders and military commanders gather to discuss their response. Among them, Admiral Peter Franklin utters the words that will soon echo across the stars. Perhaps it's time humanity stopped being polite. Part 2. The Diplomatic Deception. Over the next 6 months, humanity plays the role of the grateful, humble species. Earth's representatives, led by Secretary General Laura Hunt, appear to accept their subordinate position in galactic politics while requesting modest technological exchanges and permission to observe Galactic Council proceedings. Meanwhile, in secret facilities across the solar system, humanity's brightest minds work tirelessly. Chief Engineer Samantha Weiss leads a team reverse engineering alien technology from the limited samples they've been able to acquire. Captain Eric Davis commands a covert mission to hack into the Saurian monitoring satellites, using them to gather intelligence on alien communications and technology. Dr. Alan Peterson, a xenolinguist, makes a critical discovery while analyzing Saurian communications. The aliens have been discussing humanity as a potential military threat, not as a species. Needing protection? The quarantine isn't benevolent, it's containment. Most shocking of all, data decrypted by computer specialist Maria Rodriguez reveals that the Saurians have placed similar restrictions on 17 other emerging spacefaring civilizations, harvesting their resources and occasionally conscripting their populations for labor, while keeping them technologically stunted. When the Galactic Council announces plans to establish a permanent advisory base on Earth's moon, humanity realizes time is running out. They must act before they lose even the limited independence they still possess. Part 3. The Hidden Fleet. While the Saurians focus their attention on Earth, humanity secretly transforms their mining operations in the asteroid belt into massive shipyards. Under the leadership of Fleet Admiral Vanessa Carter, Earth constructs its first true warships, incorporating both human innovation and adapted alien technology. The flagship of this hidden fleet, the UES Defiance, represents humanity's refusal to accept subjugation. Its captain, John Reeves, was once a diplomat who witnessed firsthand the Saurians' dismissive attitude toward humans. Lieutenant Gregory Wilson develops a revolutionary shield technology that the aliens had deemed theoretically impossible for humans to create. Communications. Officer Kevin Richards perfects a method of faster-than-light communication that evades Saurian detection. When the alien delegation arrives to break ground on their lunar base, they're greeted by Secretary General Hunt and a small honor guard. The Saurian High Commissioner Trex delivers a patronizing speech about guiding humanity toward maturity. Just as the ceremony concludes, the UES Defiance and its battle group of 30 ships decloak in lunar orbit, weapons primed and shields raised. Through the comm system, Captain Reeves delivers humanity's new message to the shocked aliens. We appreciate your concern for our development, but we've decided to chart our own course. The quarantine ends today. Part 4. The Battle Above Europa. The Zorians, outraged at this display of defiance, summon their enforcement fleet to crush the human rebellion before it can inspire other subjugated species. High Commander Krell vows to make an example of Earth. In the ice fields of Europa, humanity springs its trap. What the Zorians believed was a small scientific outpost is revealed as a massive defense platform. When the alien armada arrives, they find themselves caught between this fortress and the human fleet, which has positioned itself using knowledge of spatial anomalies that the aliens didn't believe humans could detect. Chief Tactical Officer Susan Martinez executes a battle plan that leverages humanity's greatest strength, our adaptability. While Zorian ships follow rigid, predictable battle formations, human vessels employ guerrilla tactics, striking from unexpected vectors and constantly changing their approach. Navigator Paul Johnson pilots the UES Defiance through a series of maneuvers that the Zorians dismiss as suicidal, until they realize too late that the humans have weaponized the radiation belts of Jupiter in ways the aliens never imagined possible. As their flagship burns and their formation breaks, High Commander Krell demands to know how a primitive species could possibly defeat their superior technology. Admiral Carter's response is transmitted across all frequencies. We stopped asking for permission to advance. Part 5. A New Galactic Order. The news of humanity's victory spreads quickly throughout the galaxy. The 17 other quarantined civilizations rise up against their Zorian overlords. Representatives from these species arrive at Earth, seeking alliance rather than subjugation. At the emergency session of the Galactic Council, humanity arrives not as a petitioner, but as a liberating force. Admiral Carter, Secretary General Hunt, and Captain Reeves present evidence of the Zorians' systematic oppression of developing species. When several elder races attempt to dismiss humanity's claims, Dr. Linda Mason unveils the final piece of humanity's plan, a revolutionary translation system that allows all species to communicate equally, breaking the Zorians' monopoly on galactic communication. The era of politeness at the expense of progress is over, declares Secretary General Hunt. Humanity proposes a new galactic charter, one that judges civilizations not by their age, but by their contributions and character. In the epilogue, we see the establishment of a new galactic headquarters on neutral territory. Human ships travel freely between the stars, greeted with respect rather than condescension. Former protected species develop their own unique technologies without restriction. The final scene shows a young cadet, Lisa Morgan, departing on her first deep space mission. As her ship prepares for faster-than-light travel, her commanding officer reminds her of the lesson that changed humanity's place in the cosmos. Be kind when possible, be firm when necessary, but never let anyone tell you what humans are capable of. That's the day we stopped being polite and started making history. End of outline. The day humanity stopped being polite. Part 2. Laura Hunt smoothed her gray suit and took a deep breath before entering the meeting room. 6 months had passed since the Zorians arrived. 6 months of smiling politely while the aliens looked down on humans. Secretary General Hunt, we are pleased you could join us, said High Ambassador Zrel. The tall blue alien barely looked at her as she entered. The honor is mine, Laura said with a practiced smile. She hated how she had to pretend, to be grateful for every crumb of attention from these aliens. But orders were orders, play nice, act humble, for now. After Laura sat down, she noticed Jack Miller, her deputy, giving her a subtle nod. The signal meant their plan was working. While she kept the Zorians busy with this meeting, human scientists were hard at work. We have considered your request to observe our council proceedings, Israel said. We believe it is too soon. Your species is not ready for such responsibility. Laura lowered her eyes as if disappointed. We understand. We only wish to learn from your wisdom. The words tasted bitter in her mouth. Behind her diplomatic face, Laura's mind raced with the knowledge of what was happening across the solar system. In a hidden lab beneath the Martian surface, Samantha Weiss held up a small blue device. It was part of a Zorian scanner they had managed to borrow during a tour of the alien ship. Look at this, Sam said to her team. They use quantum fields to analyze matter, but their approach is completely different from what we tried. Sam's hands moved quickly as she connected the alien device to human computers. For months, her team had been reverse engineering every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. The Zorians thought humans were just curious children asking for simple knowledge. They had no idea that each demonstration, each educational session was being recorded, analyzed, and used to understand their technology. "How long until we can reproduce this?" asked a lab assistant. 2 weeks, Sam said. "Maybe less. The principles aren't as complex as they want us to." Believe. Captain Eric Davis floated in zero gravity inside his small stealth ship. The vessel was painted with special materials that absorbed scanning beams. It was practically invisible as it approached one of the Zorian monitoring satellites orbiting Earth. "Ready for contact in 30 seconds, whispered his co-pilot. The mission was extremely dangerous. If the Zorians caught them tampering with their technology, the aliens would have all the excuse they needed to take direct control of Earth. "Deploying the interface now," Eric said. A small robot detached from their ship and attached itself to the satellite. The robot looked like space debris to casual observation, but it contained some of humanity's most advanced hacking tools. "Connection established," said the computer specialist on board. "Beginning data extraction." Eric watched nervously as the minutes ticked by. Finally, the specialist smiled. "We're in." Their security is good, but they never expected anyone to physically access the satellite. Data began flowing into their ship's computers. The Zorians had been using these satellites not just to monitor Earth but to communicate with their home world. Now humans would hear everything they said. Dr. Alan Peterson stared at his screen, his eyes wide with shock. "Can you confirm this translation?" he asked his assistant. "I've run it 3 times, sir. There's no mistake." The words on the screen were from a private conversation between Zorian officials. They weren't talking about protecting humanity. They were discussing how to keep humans contained. "Potential military application of human adaptability presents unacceptable risk to Council stability," read one message. "Standard containment protocols recommended, with resource extraction to begin after Earth base is established," read another. Alan picked up his secure phone. "Get me Admiral Franklin, now." Maria Rodriguez worked through the night, her fingers flying over her keyboard. As Earth's top computer specialist, she had been given the encrypted data from the Zorian communications network. What she found made her blood run cold. Earth wasn't the first. The Zorians had done this before 17 times. 17 other species had been labeled as protected, only to have their resources stripped and their people used as cheap labor. Some had been kept in this state for centuries, never allowed to advance beyond their solar systems. "Got you," Maria whispered as she cracked another level of encryption. The screen filled with images of planets much like Earth, but their surfaces were scarred with massive mining operations. Their people lived in poverty while their resources went to feed the Galactic Council's endless appetite. Back in the meeting room, Laura Hunt listened as Zrel outlined plans for a permanent advisory base on the moon. "This will allow us to better guide your development," the alien said. "The base will include residential areas for 10,000 Zorian advisors." "That sounds wonderful," Laura said while her stomach turned. The images Maria had sent to her private tablet showed what these advisory bases had become on other worlds. Military installations that controlled orbital space and prevented any unauthorized launches. "Your enthusiasm is noted," Zrel said without emotion. "Construction will begin next month. We will require human labor, of course, for your learning experience." "Of course," Laura agreed. "We're always eager to learn." As the meeting ended, Laura walked quickly to the secure conference room where Admiral Franklin waited. "They're moving faster than we expected," she said as soon as the door closed. "The moon base is a control center, not an embassy." Admiral Franklin nodded grimly. "Then we move faster too. How soon can we reveal our fleet?" Laura checked her notes. "Vanessa reports the Defiance will be ready in 3 weeks. The rest of the battle group shortly after." "Tell her she has 2 weeks," Franklin said. "When the Zorians arrive to break ground on their base, we'll break the news instead." Laura smiled for the first time that day. A real smile. not the fake one she wore for the aliens. I look forward to seeing their faces when they realize we've been playing them all along. In shipyards hidden throughout the asteroid belt, the first true human warships took shape. The UES Defiance grew day by day as workers added armor plating and weapon systems based on Zorian designs, but improved by human ingenuity. John Reeves walked through the corridors of the ship that would soon be his to command. Once he had been a diplomat like Laura, forced to smile while aliens talked down to humanity. Now he would be the one delivering humanity's real message to the stars. "Captain, we've installed the new shield generators," Lieutenant Gregory Wilson reported. "They're not only working, they're exceeding the alien specs by 20%. They said it was impossible for humans to understand their shield technology," John said with a smile. "They were wrong about a lot of things," Gregory replied. Across the solar system, humanity prepared in secret. They played the part of the grateful, humble species while building the tools they would need when they finally stopped being polite. The day was coming soon. The day humanity stopped being polite. Part 3. In the darkness of the asteroid belt, Fleet Admiral Vanessa Carter watched as workers attached the final weapons array to the UES Defiance. The ship was massive, nearly half a mile long, with sleek lines that hid its true power. It looked nothing like the clunky ships humans had built before. This vessel carried humanity's hopes for freedom. "How much longer?" Vanessa asked her chief engineer. "4 days until all systems are online," the woman replied. "We're ahead of schedule." Vanessa nodded with satisfaction. Around the Defiance, 29 other warships were in various stages of completion. Some were smaller and faster, designed for quick attacks. Others were heavy with weapons, built to stand and fight. Together, they formed the first real human battle fleet. The workers had labored in secret for months. What the Zorians thought were simple mining operations were actually massive shipyards. The aliens never bothered to check closely. They believed humans were too primitive to hide anything from their sensors. Vanessa's comm unit beeped. "Admiral, we have news from Earth. The Zorians have moved up the lunar base ceremony. They'll arrive in 6 days. Vanessa's expression hardened. "Then we have 5 days. Tell all ships to prepare for launch." Captain John Reeves stood on the bridge of the Defiance as the final systems came online. Through the view screen, he could see other ships of the fleet taking position. They had launched under cover of a meteor shower, using the natural phenomenon to mask their engine signatures. "Shield status?" John asked. Lieutenant Gregory Wilson looked up from his console. "Shields at full power, Captain. The modifications are working perfectly." Gregory had done what the Zorians thought impossible. He had taken their basic shield design and improved it, making it stronger and more efficient. The aliens had shared only basic technology with humans, believing the complex science behind it was beyond human understanding. They were wrong. "Communications?" John turned to his comm officer. "Ready, sir," said Kevin Richards. "Our new FTL comm system is online. We can talk to any ship in the fleet instantly, and the Zorians can't detect our signals." Kevin had developed a method of communication that used principles the aliens had dismissed as theoretical. While the Zorians relied on standard subspace channels that could be monitored, human ships could now talk to each other through a different dimension entirely. John nodded with satisfaction. Every system on his ship represented human ingenuity. The aliens had underestimated what humans could do when pushed into a corner. "All hands, prepare for lunar orbit. It's time to show the Zorians who they're really dealing with." On the lunar surface, a grand ceremony was underway. The Zorians had built a temporary platform where their High Commissioner Trex would officially begin construction of their base. Secretary General Laura Hunt and a small group of human officials stood nearby, dressed in formal attire. Trex stepped to the podium, his blue skin shimmering under the lights. "Today marks a new chapter in humanity's development," he said, his translator conveying his words in a flat tone. "With our guidance, your species will one day reach maturity." The Zorian officials behind him nodded in agreement. None of them noticed the small smile that played at the corners of Laura's mouth. "The Galactic Council has decided that humanity requires closer supervision," Trex continued. This base will allow us to properly monitor your activities and prevent you from making dangerous mistakes. Laura stepped forward when invited, her face a mask of appropriate gratitude. On behalf of Earth, we thank the Galactic Council for their attention. The subtle emphasis on the last word was missed by the aliens. They did not understand human speech patterns well enough to detect sarcasm. Now, Trek said, lifting a ceremonial tool, we will break ground on the future of human development. He never got the chance to use it. In the sky above the moon, space seemed to ripple and tear. Where there had been nothing, suddenly 30 warships appeared. The UES Defiance led the formation, its weapons primed and shields glowing with power. The lunar surface, the Zorians froze in shock. Their sensors had detected nothing until the ships decloaked. Trex dropped the ceremonial tool. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. Laura smiled openly now. I believe my colleague would like to explain. On every screen and communication device, Captain John Reeves's face appeared. His expression was calm but determined. High Commissioner Trex, representatives of the Galactic Council. I am Captain John Reeves, of the United Earthship Defiance. We appreciate your concern for our development, but we've decided to chart our own course. The quarantine ends today. Trex's face darkened to a deeper blue in anger. This is impossible. Your species does not possess this level of technology. You're right, Laura said. We didn't possess it. We built it, using what we learned from you and our own innovation. While you thought we were mining resources, we were building a fleet. While you thought we were asking innocent questions, we were studying your technology. The Zorian delegation was in chaos now. Some were shouting into communication devices while others simply stared at the sky in disbelief. This is an act of rebellion, Trex shouted. The Galactic Council will not stand for this. We're not asking permission, Laura replied. We're informing you of our decision. Humanity will no longer accept second-class status in the galaxy. On the bridge of the Defiance, John watched as Zorian emergency signals lit up the communications array. They were calling for help, summoning their enforcement fleet. They're responding exactly as we predicted, Kevin said from the communication station. John nodded. And their enforcement fleet will arrive exactly where we want them. Gregory looked up from his tactical display. Captain, our sensors detect a Zorian battlecruiser changing course toward Earth. They were hiding it on the far side of the moon. They always have a backup plan, John said. So do we. Admiral Carter? The view screen changed to show Admiral Vanessa Carter on her command ship. We see it, Captain. Battle Group 2 is moving to intercept. John turned back to the view of the lunar surface, where the Zorian delegation was being escorted back to, their ships by human security forces. Not as prisoners, but not as honored guests either. Lieutenant Wilson, prepare a message to be broadcast on all frequencies, all languages, John ordered. Tell every world under Zorian protection that humanity has broken the chains. Tell them that if they want freedom, now is the time to rise. Wilson smiled as he prepared the transmission. Message ready, sir. Send it, John said. And set course for Europa. The Zorians will bring their fight there, and we'll be waiting. The Defiance turned gracefully and accelerated away from the moon, its engines glowing bright against the darkness of space. Behind it, the rest of the human fleet followed in perfect formation. The day humanity stopped being polite had arrived. The galaxy would never be the same. The day humanity stopped being polite. Part 4. The ice moon. Europa glowed softly against the massive backdrop of Jupiter. On its surface, what the Zorians had believed was a small scientific outpost now transformed. Massive doors slid open in the ice, revealing weapon systems and defense platforms hidden beneath the frozen surface. Inside the command center of this secret fortress, Admiral Vanessa Carter watched her tactical display. Red dots appeared at the edge of the screen, marking the arrival of the Zorian enforcement fleet. They brought 15 battleships, said her tactical officer, plus support vessels, nearly 40 ships total. Vanessa nodded calmly. Exactly as our intelligence suggested. They always send the same response to rebellion. No creativity, and opened a channel to all human ships. This is Admiral Carter. The Zorians have arrived with their standard enforcement fleet. Take your positions. Remember your training. These aliens think in straight lines. We don't. High Commander Krell stood on the bridge of the Zorian flagship, his expression dark with anger. The humans had tricked them. They had built warships in secret. They had dared to reject the Galactic Council's protection. Deploy in standard formation, Krell ordered. Target their main fleet first, then the ground installation. His second-in-command looked nervous. Commander, our scouts report unusual movement from the human vessels. They're not forming a defensive line. Of course not, Krell said with contempt. They have no experience in space combat. They don't know proper tactics. On his view screen, the human ships scattered in different directions, taking positions that made no sense to Zorian military doctrine. Some hid behind small moons. Others used Jupiter's radiation belts for cover. It looked like chaos. They flee in panic, Krell said, pleased. Press the attack. Chief Tactical Officer Susan Martinez watched from the UES Defiance as the Zorian ships approached in a perfect V formation. They were disciplined, organized, and completely predictable. They're following standard attack pattern Gamma, Susan reported to Captain Reeves. Just as the data we stole from their satellites showed. Captain, Reeves nodded. They've used the same tactics for 300 years. Why change what works against less advanced opponents? Their front ships are entering the target zone now, Susan said. Signal all ships, ordered Reeves. Execute Battle Plan Delta. The space around Europa suddenly erupted with activity. Human ships that had seemed to flee in disorder now moved with perfect coordination. They attacked from multiple vectors, hitting the rigid Zorian formation from angles the aliens weren't defending. On the Defiance, Navigator Paul Johnson worked his controls with calm precision. The massive ship spun and rolled in ways the Zorians thought impossible for a vessel that size. Their targeting computers couldn't lock onto the human ship as it danced through space, firing with deadly accuracy. They're trying to predict our movements, Paul reported. But they can't. Their combat algorithms are based on rigid formations. Captain Reeves watched as 3 Zorian cruisers tried to surround his ship. Let's show them something new. Execute the Jupiter maneuver. Paul's eyes widened slightly. Yes, sir. The Defiance suddenly accelerated toward Jupiter, diving toward the gas giant's dangerous radiation belts. The 3 Zorian ships followed, their commanders believing they had forced the human vessel into a desperate move. They're following, Susan reported. All 3. As expected, said Captain Reeves. Now, High Commander Krell watched in confusion as the human flagship flew toward certain doom. Jupiter's radiation would fry their sensors and shields. It was suicide. The fools, he said. They're destroying themselves. Then something impossible happened. The human ship skimmed the upper edge of Jupiter's magnetosphere, then suddenly cut its main engines. Small maneuvering thrusters fired in a complex pattern, causing the ship to spin on its axis while continuing its forward momentum. What are they doing? Krell demanded. His science officer looked up from her station, her face pale blue with shock. They're using Jupiter's magnetic field to charge their weapons. They're channeling the planet's radiation through their ship's systems. Impossible, Krell shouted. No ship can do that. The energy would... Before he could finish, the human ship released a massive energy pulse. The blast caught all 3 pursuing Zorian ships, overloading their shields instantly. The vessels didn't explode. They simply went dark, drifting helplessly in space. On the Defiance, the bridge crew cheered as the Zorian ships lost power. Jupiter maneuver successful, Paul reported, his hands still dancing over the controls to stabilize their ship. Minor damage to our secondary systems, but shields held at 82%. Captain Reeves allowed himself a small smile. The Zorians always said that trick was theoretically impossible. Something about shield harmonics. They were right, Susan said, according to their shield designs, but Lieutenant Wilson redesigned ours specifically to channel radiation, rather than just block it. Across the battlefield, Other human ships were executing their own surprising tactics. Smaller vessels worked in pairs, one drawing Zorian fire, while the other attacked from blind spots. The fortress on Europa fired precisely targeted beams that disrupted the Zorians' communication systems. "Admiral Carter is signaling," said Kevin from communications. "The Zorian fleet is being divided. Battle Group 3 is moving to cut off their retreat." Captain Reeves nodded. "Let's join them. Navigator, set course to rendezvous with battle." Group 3. High Commander Krell watched in growing horror as his perfect formation broke apart. 7 of his ships were already disabled. 5 more were heavily damaged, and the humans kept coming, their tactics changing every few minutes as if they were making up the rules of space combat on the spot. "Order all ships to regroup," he commanded. "We need to consolidate our firepower." "Sir," his communications officer responded, "we've lost contact with our right flank. The humans are using some kind of jamming technology we've never seen before." Krell slammed his fist on his command chair. "Impossible, these are primitives. How can they defeat the Galactic Council's finest ships?" Just then, his flagship rocked violently. The view screen showed the human flagship approaching, its weapons firing in a precise pattern that somehow found gaps in their shields. "Sir," his tactical officer said, her voice shaking, "they're targeting specific systems rather than trying to destroy us outright. They're disabling our ships one system at a time." Another explosion rocked the bridge. The lights flickered and went out, replaced by dim emergency lighting. "Main power lost," someone reported. "Weapons offline. Shields at 12%. Krell stared at the view screen in disbelief as the human flagship came to a halt directly in front of his crippled vessel. A communication request flashed on his screen. With no other choice, he accepted the call. Admiral Vanessa Carter's face appeared on the screen. Her expression was not one of triumph or hatred, just calm determination. "High Commander Krell, this battle is over. Your fleet is defeated. We offer you the chance to surrender with honor." "How?" Krell demanded, his voice breaking. "How did a primitive species defeat our superior technology?" The human admiral's expression didn't change. "We stopped asking for permission to advance. We studied your tactics for months. We knew exactly how you would fight because you've been fighting the same way for centuries. We simply adapted." "The Galactic Council will not stand for this," Krell warned. "The Council will have to adapt too," Admiral Carter replied. "We're already in contact with the 17 other species you've kept protected. They're rising up too. The age of Zorian dominance is ending today." Krell looked around his damaged bridge at his injured crew. With a heavy heart, he gave the order he never thought he would give. "We surrender." The day humanity stopped being polite had become the day humanity showed the galaxy its true strength. The day humanity stopped being polite. Part 5 news of the Zorian defeat spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. On 17 worlds under Zorian protection, people looked up at the night sky with new hope. The message from Earth reached them all. The time of submission was over. 1 month after the Battle of Europa, representatives from all corners of the galaxy gathered in the great assembly hall of the Galactic Council. For the first time in centuries, the massive chamber was filled with new faces. Species that had never been allowed to speak now took seats at the table. Secretary General Laura Hunt led the human delegation. Beside her walked Captain John Reeves, Admiral Vanessa Carter, and Dr. Linda Mason, Earth's leading expert in alien languages. They entered the hall with their heads held high, no longer playing the part of humble newcomers. The elder races of the Council watched with unease. For thousands of years, they had ruled the galaxy through the Zorians, who acted as their enforcers. Now that system was crumbling before their eyes. "The assembly will come to order," announced the council leader, a tall gray being from an ancient race. "We gathered today to address the situation regarding Earth and the other protected worlds." Laura stepped forward when invited to speak. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings from countless worlds. "For too long, the Galactic Council has divided species into 2 groups, those who rule and those who serve," she began. Humanity was expected to join the second group. We were told this was for our protection, for our own good. We now know the truth. Murmurs ran through the crowd. The council leader banged his staff for order. Your rebellion has caused chaos throughout the galaxy, he said. Established protocols have been disrupted, trade routes thrown into disorder. Protocols that exploited our worlds, called out a representative from one of the formerly protected planets. Trade routes that took our resources and gave little in return. Admiral Carter stepped forward. We have shared with all protected worlds the evidence we gathered. The mining operations on their planets, the conscription of their people for labor, the deliberate suppression of their technological advancement. She activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. Images appeared showing massive strip mines on beautiful worlds, labor camps filled with alien species, and Zorian ships carrying resources away from depleted planets. This evidence is incomplete and taken out of context, protested the Zorian representative, one of the few who still held a place in the council after their defeat. Then perhaps you can explain this, said Captain Reeves, changing the display to show internal Zorian communications. Your own words. Maintain resource extraction at current levels. If local populations resist, reduce food shipments until compliance is restored. The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Many of the elder races looked uncomfortable. Some seemed genuinely shocked, as if they had not known the details of how the Zorians maintained order. The council leader banged his staff repeatedly. Order! We must have order! When the noise died down, Dr. Linda Mason stepped forward. She carried a small device in her hands. The foundation of exploitation is control of information, she said. For centuries, the Zorians have served as translators between species, controlling what each of us hears from the others. She placed her device on the central platform. Humanity has developed a universal translation system that does not require Zorian input. It translates directly between all known languages, allowing each species to speak for itself. The device activated, projecting a field throughout the chamber. Suddenly, the representatives could understand each other perfectly, without the Zorian translators who had always stood between them. This is how the Zorians maintained their power, Laura explained. They mistranslated, they edited, they changed meanings to suit their purposes. They kept us all isolated from each other while pretending to connect us. One of the elder council members, who had been silent until now, slowly stood. Is this true? He asked the Zorian representative. Have you been manipulating our words? To these younger species. The Zorian couldn't meet his eyes. Laura Hunt addressed the council again. The era of politeness at the expense of progress is over. Humanity proposes a new galactic charter, one that judges civilizations not by their age but by their contributions and character. She stepped forward, placing a data crystal on the central table. Our proposal is simple: equal representation for all spacefaring species, shared technology for mutual advancement, open communication without manipulation, and most importantly, the freedom for each world to chart its own course. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For some, it meant the end of privilege. For others, a new beginning. You ask us to overturn thousands of years of galactic order, said the council leader slowly. We don't ask, Admiral Carter replied firmly. The old order has already fallen. The question now is what we build in its place. 6 months later, Lisa Morgan stood on the observation deck of the UES Discovery, Earth's newest exploration vessel. At 22, she was the youngest navigator ever assigned to a deep space mission. Before her, the stars beckoned. First time heading beyond our solar system? Asked a voice behind her. Lisa turned to see her commanding officer, Captain Amy Weston. Yes, ma'am, Lisa replied. I still can't believe I'm here. Captain Weston smiled. You earned your place. Your simulation scores were off the charts. Together they looked out at the vast field of stars. In the distance, ships from other worlds moved through space. Some were headed to Earth for trade or diplomatic missions. Others traveled with human vessels on joint exploration projects. When I was your age, Captain Weston said, we thought we'd be lucky if we ever reached Mars in our lifetime. Now we're heading to the galactic core as equals with species that have been traveling the stars for millennia. All because we stopped being polite, Lisa said, recalling the phrase that had become famous throughout human space. Not exactly, the captain corrected. We stopped accepting limitations placed on us by others. There's a difference. We're still respectful to our galactic neighbors. We just don't let anyone tell us what humans are capable of anymore. A voice came over the ship's communication system. Bridge to Captain Weston, we're ready for departure. Acknowledged, the captain replied. She turned to Lisa. Ready to make history, Navigator Morgan? Lisa nodded, feeling a surge of pride and excitement. Ready, Captain. As they walked to the bridge, Lisa thought about all that had happened in the past year. Human ships now traveled freely between the stars. Earth had become a center for galactic diplomacy. Former protected species were developing their own unique technologies, their people finally free to reach their full potential. And it had all started on that day when humanity decided to stop being polite and started being honest about what they deserved in the galaxy. The UES Discovery's engines hummed to life, and Earth grew smaller behind them as they headed toward the stars.